1,000 years and crawled through broken glass. I believe that any man should have the right to go to work at any time, and he shouldn't have to present a card at the front door to get in. And this is going on right in our state now. Right now on the dam, a poor man came up that had a family, wanted to come in, and he said, "Can I see you, Governor?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Could you get me on over to the dam?" I said, "Well, what's the trouble?" He said, "Well, I'm a union man, but the man that's in charge there of the union won't let me on." I said, "Well, don't go talk to him. We've got the right to work law in this state. Go and see the boss, or the personnel manager." Well, nothing ever happened on it, and the guy waited and waited and waited and never got on. I've been opposed to the closed shop, and that's the way I would be. So I could say I'd take a look at your resolutions, as I do any and every organization, and give them a hearing. If it was something new that I didn't understand, that's the way I'd have to go. But I wouldn't be a rubber stamp for any organization. I think he was standing before you were.
I'm Roland Green from Sturgis, South Dakota, and I direct my question to Governor Foss. And I'd like to ask the Governor, would you be in favor of repealing our law which provides that lawyers must join the lawyers' union before they can practice in South Dakota?
Well, not being a lawyer, you say there's a law that the governor has to... I don't quite get your question there, sir.
I believe there's a law on the statute of South Dakota that provides that an attorney, after he has passed all his examinations and had all the education required, must join the lawyers' union before he can be admitted to the bar.
Well, is that right, Terry?
Yeah, it's an integrated bar, and in order to practice law in South Dakota, you're required to be a member of the state bar. There was a lot of opposition to it in the past by some of the older lawyers.
Well, if I were a lawyer, I'd want to repeal. If it affected me, but if the lawyers in that closed corporation that they have are happy, you have enough troubles without going into that.
Is that a right to work law for the lawyers?
Is that a right to... Well, I suppose you could, by technicality, say that it was, but I'm still not in favor of repealing the right to work law, because I'm a man that has to work with my hands, and that's what I'm concerned with.
Is the right to work law good for some people or certain occupations and not for others?
Well, it would probably be better if you repealed the law that they have. In fact, if I would carry on, I would recommend breaking that show up too, just to tangle with the lawyers for an extra day's work. Do you have a short question to say, Nemo? Go ahead.
It'd be long or short. Again, I commend this wonderful panel performance of Bob Lusk here. Just one little question, if they want to comment on it. How do the candidates stand on federal aid to education, federal aid to highways?
What candidates do you have in mind?
Well, I suppose the candidates for Congress, for instance.
How do the candidates for Congress stand on federal aid for education? We'll begin left and right. Joe, would you participate very briefly? Okay, I am opposed to federal aid to education. George?
Well, I can't answer this question that briefly. I'm amazed that anybody would say that they're opposed to federal aid to education when we've been operating under such a program even before we had a constitution in this country. Way back in 1785, it was provided that a certain part of the federal lands would be set aside for the support of our schools, and we've continued from that day to this with a number of federal aid programs for our schools, including our South Dakota State College at Brookings, and our GI Bill of Rights program for the veterans of World War II, our school lunch program, our school milk program. Now, I can't believe that my distinguished opponent really means it when he says that he's against federal aid to education, period. He certainly wouldn't suggest that we undo all these splendid programs that have meant so much to the American people. We can have some of this income tax that is taken into Washington returned to the states for educational purposes. Certainly the property owners of South Dakota and other parts of the nation have reached the breaking point in attempting to carry the responsibilities of increased educational costs, and I think the time has come when some of this federal money ought to be returned to the states and earmarked for the support of the schools without any strings attached in the way of federal control.
I get 2 sentences to put in on that deal. Terry.
George McGovern has stated my position very well. My opponent has said on the floor of the House on one of his rare appearances that he was opposed to federal aid to education, period. And he went on to say that federal aid would tend to socialize. I don't know what that means, but he said that it would tend to socialize our educational system. Now, don't misunderstand me. I don't want the federal government to take over our educational system in the state of South Dakota. But I think that South Dakota is entitled to the same federal aid that any other state in the Union is concerned, if we want to use it, and without any strings from the federal government. I might add parenthetically that if I had been in the House that Mr. Berry was when they had the great Tidelands oil giveaway, I would have seen to it, as to the best of my ability, that revenue would have been put into an educational fund to be allocated to the states on the basis of population and need.
That answer the question? You and the front there.
My name is Arthur Donald from Minor, South Dakota, and the governor or the candidate for Congress on the Republican ticket had a chance to answer, or whether he is for the so-called free market for agriculture, which some people believe is the only segment of our economy that ought to be so exposed, and what type of a farm program he is for. I think it's only fair to the membership here in the Farmers Union to find out what the 2 other candidates for Congress really stand for, whether they say of returning American agriculture back to the free market, which practically at one time wrecked our total economy, not only agriculture. I would like to have that same answer. I'd like to address the same question to Congressman McGovern and the candidate for Congress, McCullen.
Mr. Moderator, I certainly want to make my position clear on this point. I think there's been a tendency here today to give the impression that both political parties are confused on this issue and that they only talk about it during an election year, and that the farm organizations are also in disagreement. Well, now, it may be true that there are disagreements on this issue, but somebody has to be wrong and somebody's right. And at least one of these big farm organizations is all wet on this matter of farm prices and what determines the health of American agriculture. And I'm not talking about the Farmers Union. Now, the trouble with relying on the law of supply and demand is that when there's a supply, there isn't any demand in all too many cases. And we had a good opportunity to see what would happen back in the 1920s and the 1930s when we had a free market and our farm economy simply collapsed. Now, I do say this, that on any kind of a price support program or compensatory payments or on acreage controls or bushel quotas or anything else, that we ought to have that geared to the family size operator. It's not right to require the small farm operator to take the same percentage acreage cut that we require of the man who's operating thousands of acres. That ought... By the same token, these price support loans or compensatory payments ought to be geared to the family size operator. I happen to be the author of a proposal that would establish a cutoff level at the equivalent of 14,000 bushels of wheat, or the equivalent of that in any other commodity, and that above that point the government would not be held responsible for either price support operations or compensatory payments. And I believe very strongly that it would be disastrous for American agriculture to return to a completely free market. We've been headed in that direction for the last 6 years, but we've been headed there over the objections of the Democratic Party. 90% of the members of my party have fought against that trend. We came up with 2 good price support programs in the 84th Congress and again in the 85th Congress, and both of them were vetoed by the White House, and there is where the responsibility lies for this dangerous return to the free market.
I don't think it's possible to return to a free market and still keep our economy on anywhere near a normal basis in this country. West of the river, my opponent embraces the Wool Act and takes great credit for its passage. And I'm in favor of the Wool Act, and should be, because to me, in the final analysis, the present Wool Act that applies is the brand of the plan in operation. And if it'll work for wool, I think it'll work for the rest of the agricultural products in this country. We simply can't. I mean, it's idle talk to talk about returning to a free economy. No other segment of our industry is on that basis, and agriculture can't operate on that basis either.
We'll take these 2 questions that are standing here on the floor, and then we will conclude our program. You're first, and will you please make it short? First of all, first Calvin, I'd like to have Mr. Herseth comment on that question. What do you think, Mr. Herseth, is your platform on farm-to-market roads?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question.
What's your platform, Mr. Herseth, on farm-to-market roads in small towns?
Farm commodity loans?
Farm-to-market roads.
Oh. Well, this is a wide open question from the controversy that we've seen in the newspapers recently about highways in South Dakota. I would say that I should not like to give the impression to this audience that I would give preference to a group that I emanate from. However, I am first and foremost a farmer, and I live on the farm yet that I was born on and operated. And I think that for the economy of South Dakota, it is of more importance to improve the farm-to-market roads than it is to have an interstate highway system. I think it should occupy a higher priority, if that is one of the questions that is in your mind. I think they should come first. I don't think that they should all be elaborate, but they should be, to make a little specificness here, they should be better than most of the roads, farm-to-market roads that I saw in the counties of Harding and Henning and Meade and Ziebach and Dewey and Corson and Butte just last week.
Thank you very much. Now, the other gentleman who asked a question, my name is George Silas from McIntyre, South Dakota. I would like to ask Congressman McGovern whether it is a matter of record when Senator Young got up on the Senate floor and called the attention of the smear that was brought up against you to Merck set up these panels low down. And called the attention that Senator Thye of Minnesota and Senator Muntz of South Dakota are involved. Is that a matter of record?
Yes, that is a matter of record, Mr. Seiler, that all of these Republican senators have openly repudiated Mr. Glenn Martz and his slanderous attacks that were made on the Farmers Union and their leadership. That was done some months ago. I can't cite you the chapter and verse, although I have those pages from the congressional record in my files, and they left no doubt about where they stood on this gentleman, if I can use that word loosely. He was very soundly condemned as a smear artist, and those words were used, as a poison pen writer. He was branded as an un-American person in the tactics that he used in attempting to discredit the leadership of the Farmers Union. And I might say, for the information of you people that aren't aware of it, that it was a letter that I wrote to one of my constituents defending the Farmers Union against these false charges by Mr. Martz that got me into all this difficulty with this gentleman. So I hope you'll do everything that you can to join with me in bringing an end to dangerous tactics of that kind.
Thank you very much, and that will conclude our question and answer period. And I wonder if it wouldn't be a good plan for the audience to give this panel, excepting the moderator, of course, a nice big hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.